It's the plague, gonna kill you in a few days. A pandemic so severe, Black Death caused such horror and fear. And there ain't no cure for that, girl. You'll be dead in no time flat, girl. You get acronicrosis from the Yersinia pestis, and it makes your tongue a black, girl. Gonna bury you out and back, girl. Fleas on rats, fleas on rats. Fleas on rats, fleas on rats. Fleas on rats, fleas on rats.
Croeso and welcome to Tales from Wales, the pod that never fails to shoot you up with the disease of banter and history and be the little rat that crawls along your ship and invades Europe with a top quality podcast. Yes, that was a riff, and yes, I think I nailed it.
I can always tell when you completely riff it because you elongate the words.
It's called giving my brain just that little couple of microseconds.
You've shown your ignorance, you little pig, that it wasn't the rats, it was the fleas that brought it. The fleas upon the
no
rats.
Smoke without fire, mate. All right, that's what I say.
Yes. How are you, my little prince? My little David.
Not bad, mate. Not bad. We had a slight potential blip there with tech issues. About to lose my shit, about to ruin the entire night, but it's okay.
It's still
to the limit, not over it,
and we're still having issues because we still have these little crackle and pops. You have little rice crackle and pops, but I think we got a way around it, which hopefully you, the listeners, won't hear, but we hear and I hear right now.
And I hate it.
Yes, but we're nothing but adaptable.
We make it work. Yeah,
it is nice as well that now you're the issue with the sound, not me, because I used to have. So
I hate that I bought these new fucking headphones. I won't go into it. We've delved this, we've mined this for all it's worth.
Bloody hell is new with you then? And don't lie.
Well, let me very naturally consult the list I made earlier, shall I? Right, I'll give you the choice.
Yeah.
You can have a little talk from me about two films.
Everything
a pretty good film.
Is so awkward. You're gonna have a little talk from me.
From me about two films. One is a Welsh film filmed in Wales.
No, is it the one that's actually not filmed in Wales though?
No, it's not that one. Not that one. I watched a one that's filmed in Wales and it's got Welsh people in it. It's got a bit of Welsh language in it. And then I watched a couple of dog shit films as well. I was going to be like, here's your yin and yang. Or I was going to talk about the Stranger Things final season because that's like somewhat on topic. A couple of weeks too late.
It blows my mind what you think is like... whenever you come up with these things. Last week he was like, oh right, Belgium, we went to holiday on Belgium. I got nothing to say about it, but let's just... This week,
I've got so much to say.
Your hot take on something that's been out over a month ago.
I know, but like you got to let everyone have a chance to watch it, haven't you?
Yeah, all right.
And
let's hear your hot
finally
take.
Put my 2 pence worth in.
Go on then. Billy Bobby Brown.
That's all I've been having on the emails. Tell us about Stranger Things, please. Dump the history angle.
So has nothing in your own life happened? Like you've got a bit of bounce?
Oh, a third option. I went to an escape room the other day. Would you like to hear about that?
That sounds much better than what your thoughts are on Billy Bobby Brown's fucking bumhole on the show.
Billy Bobby Brown.
What's her name?
Millie Bobby Brown. Very close. But
that's not too bad.
I like Billy Bobby Brown. Sounds like a cowboy name. All right, we'll do escape room then. Fair enough. We'll save the gold that is the Stranger Things reaction for another time. Okay, escape room. So we went out for a mate's birthday. Went out with another couple. We had a couple of drinks beforehand.
Who are they? Are they funny?
They're a funny gang. A gang, 2 of them, but you know what I mean. Yeah. More than one's a gang.
Do you need do you need other couple mates? Are we not enough for you?
Well, I know, mate. They're Amy's. One of them of the couple is Amy's like best mate from school.
Fair enough. Right.
The other one was the partner of said. So I'm the tag along. I'm one of the tag alongs.
And also, you are going to be our first couple to our new abode as well.
I know. I can't believe it. I'm going to ruin the house so hard. I'm going to fucking make you wish you never lived there.
Should we spew on the walls?
Oh yeah, just literal fingers down throats.
And we have the wives on.
Where have we gone from fingers down throats to we do a live one.
We could do a pod there and have our wives.
We can't
chat.
because Amy said about that before, and I said no, we can't do that. It's lads only.
Sorry, I didn't make the rules. It wasn't me who came up with these rules.
Love to have you on.
Oh, you know what?
Frank's your stickler. You wouldn't let me have you on, will he?
You're a bastard. Go on, tell me what your little. Do you like? Is this appropriate to say that?
Everyone know that
we're actually not mega hunks.
We are. Yeah.
Did you like the post I put on WhatsApp the other day? There's a photo from an escape room from about 8 years ago, and it was all 4 of the boys, all with 4 girlfriends who have now all broken up. And I said, "Oh wow, what a hell of a that was a tough escape room. But only 4 of you made it out." And I thought,
that was good.
gear.
That was good gear. That's the sort of good gear you never show the wife.
No,
you chuck that in the old recycle bin,
and that's why they're not allowed on the pod because they.
And then
not.
Go in the recycle bin and delete it from there as well.
Yes.
But yeah, we went out. We went to Roxy Lanes first. You ever been there?
No, I don't really do anything in town. I know I should have done because
do anything, bro.
All I do is go to the pub and harvest stuff.
Roxy Lanes is a bit like Boom Battle Bar. You been there?
I know. Yeah, I know. It's a bit like it's like
lots of pub games and like little bits and bobs to do.
Yeah, they're great for couples, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did like this thing. If you ever played shuffleboard,
yeah, quite fun. It's all right.
Yeah, shuffleboard's quite good. Yeah. Imagine like a big shuffleboard, but like you've got these big sticks to move these huge pucks across it. It's like giant shuffleboard. Yeah, the pucks. Yeah. And we did an hour of that. Got a nice little bit of pizza. Got a couple of drinks. Oh man,
sorry. How good? Because some of those things, I'm like, yeah, this is fine, but it's not as good as just sitting down and chatting at a pub with your mates. Like I always think those add-ons, like you don't really need it in a pub. You're in a pub. You're in the best place on earth. Don't worry about adding gimmicks.
Exactly. You don't
How
need to
good was fucking the shooting we did in Belgium?
Oh yeah, we did like airsoft.
Yeah, but it was in like in a gallery, and like
it was class.
I think was it me, you, and my wife? My wife?
No,
it was me and Craig.
Emma, and Craig. And I was with me, Amy, and Sarah.
Emma was the best out of everyone. My wife was. It was a really cool gun. So these really cool machine guns, and then you had.
They did make you feel like you were in COD IRL.
Yeah, and they had like amazing screens about 6 feet away that had like ducks going across.
You could play all sorts of games. You know, like Duck Hunt. Yeah. You could play like it was like target
Emma
shooting
was
bottles
lethal.
off an
she
old
was
saloon.
so good at it.
I did.
She tried to give me advice.
Sorry, go on. Arrogantly walk into it thinking,
we're going to nail this.
Steamroll this because I play COD sometimes.
I did good. I did quite good.
I did okay. Yeah.
Your wife had the gun handle on her, which you meant to put in like your armpit. So you meant to put the butt of the gun in your armpit. And
I kept saying to her, just put it in your shoulder, like so it absorbs the recoil. She had it, but she was like resting
like an RPG.
We played like an RPG. It took until like the third game. I went like, what are you aiming at when you look down the sight? And she went, what? And she didn't realise like the hollow sight thing was to be looked at. She was looking
wouldn't
at like
take
the barrel
any
of
advice from you.
No, she was like, I think I know better. I'll do it right. Came last every game.
That was really good though, wasn't it? Like I know they have like the darts one. They got one called Sixes, which is a cricket one. But the gun one was so much fun. Like,
it was
generally was like, oh, this is actually top tier for like a stag.
We're not one for activities.
Not at all, man.
But
I fucking hate activities. Take me to a castle. Take me to a pub. That's all you need.
Yeah, but no, that did go down really well. I thoroughly enjoyed, to be fair. This was not that good. I'm gonna say it outright. If you're thinking, oh, it's Roxy Lane's got what it takes. Yeah, you probably if you're into that, but it wasn't as good as shooting a gunny. Yeah, exactly. But it was alright. It was fine, and it was fucking pretty cheap. It was like 20 quid for you got an hour's worth of games.
That's good.
You got a whole pizza to yourself and a beer. So
what?
not
20
bad.
quid each, I assume.
20 quid each, and everyone got a pizza, a beer, and played the game for an hour.
That ain't bad.
That was alright. Yeah. So we did that. We had a couple more drinks like on the way and stuff, and then we did the escape room. I can't remember how it was called, what company it was, but it was pretty decent. They did like it was. Amy said it was Indiana Jones themed before I got there. I was like, okay, cool, fine. Got it in. It was not Indiana Jones themed. Subtle difference, but it was mummy themed. It even had.
The disdain in your face.
Well, no, as in the Mummy film.
Yeah.
Theme.
Oh wow!
Like it had
Brendan
even had the May. I was buzzing. It had the theme song. And it goes Hamanaptra, and it does the thing. That is playing pretty much constantly. and you got to find this jewel in this mummy tomb or whatever. And it was good fun, but I was told off.
Were you being Benny?
I was being too bossy.
Yeah.
I was.
You're not bossy though. I'd say you're one of the least bossy people I know.
But what it was is these three were like fucking chaotic lunatics, right? Going in there, they were just pulling on everything, going blah blah blah. Let's fucking grab everything and poke at things. Look, you got to go in and you got to find clue number 1. Otherwise, the whole sequence is ruined, right?
Can I level with you?
Yeah.
I fucking hate escape rooms.
Yes, that's what I said to Amy when she said she booked it. I was like, I don't like these things.
I liked the podcast we went on, the escape room podcast.
Yes,
that was fun.
Good.
And also, Jamie tailored that Welsh-specific one. That was really fun. Any other one I've done, I think, this is fucking tedious and I could be in a pub right now. And
I agree. But this one was all right, actually, when I got over my disdain for like the chaotic approach to it. Because like my thing is just if you don't start from clue 1, you pick up something from clue 3 and you go, what's this to do with it? Well, you won't know, will you? Think about it, you dunce. Anyway, so I was a bit like, let's read the instructions. Let's read this little bit on there, and I was probably the biggest bore of the activity. But we got through it with 10 minutes to spare. No biggie, whatever. But there's a scary one you can do, right? And Amy and Liv, who were the girls that came with us, they were like, oh, we wouldn't do the scary one, we'd be too scared. They were terrified of the mummy-themed one. Because when you do something right, like a trap door, swings open and something falls out, every time...
I'd say Amy's quite animated as well, isn't she?
Oh, absolutely.
She's the horror director's dream audience.
Shit scares of everything, yeah. Like, I'll just be walking down the stairs like a normal person, and I'll walk into the kitchen while she's there, and I'll be like, all right, and she'll go, oh my God! like shit herself. But anyway, so it was all, there was many a scare for them, not for me and Chris, it's the two of us, the two guys. The mega blokes. Yeah. And then right at the end then, it was like, oh, we basically solved the puzzle. You get this jewel from like a mummy's sarcophagus, right? And when you pull it out, the mummy like falls out, but it's attached by a chain, so it like falls in like a big like loud thing like that. That would have made me go like, ooh, That did make me go, ooh. But what made me actually shit myself was the two women going, ah, like at the top of their lungs. Just made us both shit ourselves. But anyway, like I said, we got out, 10 minutes to spare, and then it was like, right, we've been doing this for an hour now. I've sobered up too much. That's my escape.
I hate going to those things. Like, I hate anything that interrupts drinks. I'd rather don't drink beforehand, do the activity, then drink. But I hate.
Have a little mummy themed. Oh my God! If they had a mummy themed bar in there, Brendan Fraser,
but your hour would just be you sat in there.
Me,
you wouldn't do any
me
escaping.
Looking doe-eyed at him, having a couple of mummy themed cocktails.
And Rachel Weisz.
I love how I went to Brendan first. But yes, Rachel Weisz as well. Okay, and Benny. Don't forget Benny.
I was thinking earlier about do you know when you're younger, especially when you're I don't know, very informative age, like 16, and like people like Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser like kind of shape who you feel like are people you want to kind of be like. I remember when I was like 16, I adored my cousins growing up, especially my cousins from Essex. Like, I really loved them. I just thought they were fucking, they had fun voices, they were cool, they were like older than me. And they were 3 brothers, and they were all really funny. Like, all 3 of them are, 3 brothers. They're really, really funny. But one of them went to Swansea Uni, and I went to visit him when I was 16, I think I was. It was during GCSE summertime, and his other brother was there as well. So it was me and 2 cousins, and we got really drunk in the day, like proper boozy. And we were playing like loads of like FIFA, just having and I'd never been to a student house. It was like, oh my God, it's like when I watched...
This is life, mate.
Yeah, I remember when I was like 10, I used to watch 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps, and I thought, this is living.
When we used to have sleepovers, and it was like, we watched, I'd be like, oh my God,
I can't wait to have beer in the fridge.
They're such filth.
No, I used to watch it and think, God, that was aspirational for me. I used to think, oh my God.
No, I meant filth as in like so naughty.
Oh, right, yeah.
Fucking sexy and drunken.
But I don't mean just the girl. I mean the idea of having a fridge that has beer in it, like when you're like I don't know, 12, sounds like, oh, that sounds so exciting. Just like,
maybe I had a different formative experience for you then. I was looking at fucking
Sheridan Smith.
Yeah, it's mad that she's played Celia Black now. Yeah. Or Cilla Black. Celia Black. Don't care now. No, apparently she's a real knobhead in real life.
Cilla Black. Yeah, apparently she's a dickhead. Apparently she was an absolute dick. Anyway, but yeah, so I was with my cousins who I idolized, but I think we got really drunk and we discussed politics, and like I think we got to a point about Wales, and one of my cousins said Wales wasn't a real country, and I was 16. I was already drinking. It was at the time where we used to drink through our eyes. Do you ever remember doing that? We used to do a shot through your eyes.
It goes through the bloodstream.
Yeah, I'm so glad you remember that. And I was doing that. And
where did we get that from? Was it from like Kevin and Perry Go Large?
I'm not sure. But for the listeners, we used to drink vodka shots, and you do it through your eyeball. So you open your eyeball up, and you'd neck the vodka shot down there, and it'd get you drunk quicker because it burns your eyes. I'm
going to say, when we say neck it through the eyeball,
you just kind of throw a lot on your face.
Instantly spill most of it, burn the fuck out your eye. You'd be like, oh my god, I'm so smashed.
But
I'm so smashed. You get more smashed from just drinking it.
Yeah, but my cousin, I think we got into like a bit of a debate, and then I think he said Wales wasn't even a real country. Then I remember I was crying. I remember being 16.
Never meet your heroes.
Exactly. I remember nearly being sick in the bathroom going, I can't believe
life's been a lie.
And I thought about that earlier today when I was walking the dog, when I was walking to the shops, and I had a shiver down my spine, like, I really retched with embarrassment.
Tear down your cheek.
No, just cringe. You know, like you get those moments when you look back at your life, and I know every single one of us have a cringe moment that no one else will ever think about, but for you, it's pivotal, and it's like, oh Christ, this is like, you know, it'll stay with you forever. And I hadn't thought about that thought for so long, and I just thought,
amongst all the uni lads,
yeah,
a little cry. Why'd you cry? He said Wales wasn't a real country.
Which I am really glad that conversation happens less nowadays.
I was going to say, mate, I do that right now. So when Wales won a country, I'd cry on
the only time I've heard that recently, because for ages people used to say it, and then there was a legal definition, and you know, which if you Google it now is so clear, and it's always been clear.
There is actually a legal definition.
Well, that's the thing. People used to say it's a principality, and it hasn't been a principality for over 600 years. But it also, according to the UN, according to any metric, it's defined as a country in itself. The only time I've heard it recently is on the Finn versus History podcast, when Horatio didn't think it was a country, and the other two, even Charlie, the dumb producer, were like, "Dude, no!" And he wasn't in a mean way.
Bring the nationalists.
He didn't think. He didn't say it in a mean way. He said it in quite in quotations ignorant way. But the other two were like, "Mate, it's absolutely a country." And I love that podcast because they don't have any pretense about knowing anything. So it's like they're not saying, you know, some podcasts were like, this is fact, and then they kind of double down. He was just like,
they remind me of us a little bit, you know.
Yeah, you know, we're the shit version of them, but we started before them.
Exactly.
So people can't say we're mimicking them, but they can say we're not as good, because we're not as good, but we aren't mimicking them.
You can spam us on comments saying we're not as good as them.
To be fair, no one's ever said that to us, but I think we've always thought it. So
I mean, if the hosts of the podcast think it, I mean, like, we don't have this deep pockets. Right?
I mean, I'm
sure that's what it is.
And also that they're professional comedians. We're just two humble blokes.
I remember one time when we were talking about, like, what can we do to like improve the podcast? Like, should we like try and let's get some like live shows going? And we looked at each other like, is it big enough I can do that?
Right. What we are thinking of doing is a live screening. So we might put films on.
Something where we can be behind the curtains.
But put on a screening of Twin Town so we can all watch the Welsh...
Yeah, or some sort of Welsh-themed film of some kind. I did look into it the other day. I was like, what's the laws around like screening stuff? Because I don't think you can just be like, let me cast to your projector, mate. I don't think you're allowed to do that at like an actual proper venue.
Fine.
I'm sure if we go to like some dingy...
Well, I watched Hocus Pocus in the dungeons at Cardiff Castle, which was quite fun. And I was thinking...
Something tells me they have a license for that.
But I was thinking we could do something Welsh-themed at Cardiff Castle. and put it on there. But
oh, mate, do you think we have the fucking bucks to be hiring out Cardiff Castle?
Well, I was thinking when the film Excalibur comes out, we could work with Dan to find cool screenings. Anyway,
oh yeah, I'm sure you'd know him. Yeah,
talking.
They would say when the pod goes massive.
Well, the pod goes. Talking of the pod going massive, 20 minutes in, we are really keen. I'm sorry if we've said this a few times, but we're really, really keen to push the Patreon because we're a bit lax, and the whole point of anything is to make cold hard cash. So,
what's the point in creating art if you can't profit from it? That's what they say.
And this is art, actually. Okay, no, we were just saying
legal definition.
We want to take the pod more seriously this year, and we kind of were debating, seeing how far we could go with it. Like we mentioned before, we did things for the BBC and it wasn't quite the right fit, but we want to do this as like we want to see how far we could take it.
Don't want to work anymore. Okay?
We just I don't know. We feel a bit inspired to do something this year. And,
yes, I just love to do this as a proper job because it brings me such joy.
And we also, it means you can spend more time researching and doing a bit more when you don't have to worry about work as much.
not that we don't already.
We haven't quite nailed how we ask for money, but
we're still. Well, the problem is we're such naturally humble gentlemen.
We're so humble.
We get awkward. We get awkward asking for money.
But we're gonna try to do this quickly. At the start of every episode, we're gonna mention you can join the Patreon, several tiers, one for £1, one for £5, one for £10. You get bonus episodes every month. You get personalised stuff. You get dedicated episodes to where you're from. Head to the patreon.com/Tales for Wales to find out more. And that's all we'll say.
There we are.
Right.
Easy peasy. Done.
Talking of dying on your ass because trying to sell things out. Today's episode is all about dying in general. It's about the Black Death, or the Plague, or the Great Mortality, as it was known, or in Welsh.
Great Mortality. Yeah. That's kind of cool. That's the sort of edgy name. That's what the hipsters at the time got. Yeah. What's the Black? Oh, you mean the Great Mortality?
Yeah. I've got
my mum died of that too.
Yeah. Or in Cymraeg, y Pla D, the Black Plague, or y Farwolaeth Fawr, the Great Death. But what exactly is the Great Death, the Farwolaeth Fawr? I hear you splutter over your dying lungs.
Your boils.
Yeah, it was caused by Yersinia pestis, which was characterized by severe symptoms, most notably agonizing pus-filled red or black swellings, or buboes, in the lymph nodes or the armpit or the groin, often appearing 2 to 8 days after infection. Other symptoms included high fever, severe headache, chills, vomiting blood, gangrene of the fingers and toes, and then death, which is an intense symptom. What's your symptom? I've got death.
Yeah, I've got a touch of the death, Doc.
It decimated Europe in the 14th century, so the 1300s, killing somewhere in the region of 25 million people in 2 years between the first appearance in 1348 and 1350. Cymru suffered no different fate. It was estimated that in the 14th century the Welsh population was reduced by a quarter, or even a third, and most of these deaths occurred in just 1 year. So Jesus. 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 people died in 1 year, and that wiped the entire part of the population of Wales. Instances of the plague were first recorded as early as the 6th century, but the disease seemed to have lain dormant for several hundred years, and for a long while there was no recorded outbreaks. Now the bigwigs and the boffins in the labs, they aren't quite sure why, but they think the climate cooled considerably in the 14th century, and this is probably the controlling factor in the plague's sudden reappearance in the Gobi Desert and in Asia. So you think the temperatures cooling allowed the disease to come into Europe because it could do better in colder climates. All right. There were 3 main strains of the disease: the bubonic, which is caused by victims being bitten by rat fleas; the pneumonic, caused by breathing in the infection; and then the septemic, which is the poisoning of your blood. And I
didn't know that there was even those differentiations.
No, me.
I thought it was all just the bubonic plague. Yeah. That's what I heard.
Yeah, so the bubonic was the start of it, and then the pneumonic came after that. So people caught it from being bitten, and then people caught it from it being in the air. But the final one
It was outrageous. It was contagious.
It was outrageous. That was one of the first things my wife said to me that I realised I loved her. When we were talking, I went, "This is outrageous," and she went, "This is contagious," which is a quote from Peep Show. And I was like, "Wow!"
I was about to say, "Love heart eyes," instantly, wasn't it?
And then the septemic one, when it poisons your blood, that was 100% fatal. So there was no chance you survived that.
If it's the one thing you don't want poisoning in your body, it's the blood.
Well, man,
the blood's a big deal.
sepsis is still one of the biggest killers in there. You just can't stop it. But the plague...
It's everywhere. The blood, man. Everywhere is the blood.
The plague spread like wildfire globally, going east to west in all directions. Nobody was safe. King, bishop, or ruler, pauper. Everyone was thinking. Now this, right? It originated in Asia. I mean, come on, lads! Don't force the pod to stop
the
calling
original
it
Wuhan flu,
the China flu. The China alone, the population dropped from 120 million. So this is like, at the start I said there was like 25 million. That was like during one recorded part of it, but it started earlier. That was just in Europe. So 25 million people in Europe died. In China. 30 million people died over the course of the century because of it. The bloody Chinese. They love to be a part of the drama, don't they? But it was spread to Europe by fleas or rats on trade ships. And the medieval times, there was trade between Europe and Asia. But a big part of this was the Crusades increased awareness of like goods from abroad. So during the Crusades, that brought stuff from the Silk Roads and stuff going into it. And that helped the bubonic plague spread from Asia to European countries. The bubonic plague is believed to have arrived in the British Isles on a ship landed in Dorset coast from Gascony, and the disease quickly spread throughout the country. And the first recorded death in England was in June 1348. So, Wales. Not until April 1349 was the first recorded incident of the plague in Wales. And the first recorded death was... So there were other people who died, but they only really record those of note. And this guy called John Lestrange from Whitchurch, whose family had like a long history of Norman and like warrior elite in Wales. He died from the plague in August 1349. They had an inquest into his death. And John Lestrange revealed that John died in August, and his oldest son Fulk died 2 days before. But the inquest didn't start then, so they didn't have it recorded. And then his other brother Humphrey also died from it. Then his third brother John, he survived, but he inherited this shattered estate. So this guy who was like well known, his whole heritage was well known in Whitchurch in South Wales, and they all just kind of died from this thing. But they had a lot of wealth beforehand, a lot of land beforehand. But John, this third brother, he survived. But he inherited what they call a shattered estate. So he had 3 watermills, which all belonged to his family, but they were all slashed in half because no one wanted any of the land due to the pestilence. So
Christ, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so they actually became a bit of a burden on him to upkeep because they were more expensive than he could make money from. So his land was deemed worthless, and all the tenants either had died or were no longer to work there.
Such a bad run, like all your family fucking dead by this awful disease, and then you go, oh, well, I'll sell the estates. And they go, oh, much than that. It's gross because you have a league.
And all the servants who worked for him and all the tenants who had to pay rent to him all just went, fuck this, and they all left. So it was literally someone who had wealth for generations was now penniless. Yes, and it's brought to Wales by people coming from southern England arriving to Wales by sea. So those bastards can't let us live in peace, can they? Always bring stuff in. But they think
another thing that's the English fault. I got you right.
They thought it first came into contact with the customs collections in Carmarthen, which was at an import town. And the first victims soon died of the disease. It spread across the country. So the first recorded was down in Whitchurch in Cardiff, but they think it came in actually from Carmarthen when it started killing lots more people who weren't of note. The Caldicot was badly hit. I mean, I know we got listeners in Caldicot, so this might be interesting to a few of you boys and girls. so Caldecott was really badly hit. Pembroke was awfully hit, and Haverfordwest, which is one of the latest Patreon episodes we did, that was really badly hit.
Yeah, you mentioned it.
Yeah, which actually sparked me to do this episode because I didn't really consider how much of an impact this had. The lead miners of Holywell, a close-knit community, they were completely wiped out. Caldecott experienced exceptional mortality with only one in four of the previous only 4 of the previous 40 tenants surviving. So there's 40 tenants, and tenants just means the person who's kind of connected to it. They might also have a family. Only 4 of those who lived there survived to be able to carry out any work. And I'll come to this in a bit.
There's only 4 of us there. Yeah, back to work.
Well, that's the
work
thing.
Still needs to be done.
I come into this later. No one could. There's a bit of a pivotal change in what people viewed workers as, but I'm going to save that for a little bit. Anyway, so those 36 unfree tenants were recorded as being killed by the pestilence. Like I said, the people who had these houses and land, they all died. The labour force of the manor was reduced by 90%. And these figures are important because it caused a workforce shortage and slightly changed the perception of the common worker and their importance in society. Because all of a sudden, these people who are numerous, who do everything, are now not numerous and nothing gets done. So, like, we the many.
Parallels to the recent pandemic.
Exactly, yes.
Who's keeping the country going?
Like frontline staff and like all that stuff, people who like stock the shelves and all this stuff. If they go, who will do it? So they attempt to like recoup the manor in Caldecott and fill the empty tenants, but no one really wanted to go there. And then, like, when they did, a second pestilence of the plague hit again in 1362, and it wiped out again. So, like, a case of like 10 years, twice Caldecott had been pretty much desolated. I read a lot of this from this website called the Historians Magazine, which is also a magazine, but it's a really good magazine that hosts lots of historians who did PhDs in subjects. So nice. I read a lot of this stuff from there.
A bona fide source.
Man. Oh yeah, all my stuff are these days. I know ours are yours, but I think it's always good. I said this 100 times, but quoting who you get your information from, I think, is quite important.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Nobles and peasants alike in Wales, they found themselves deeply affected both economically and socially. The plague wasn't just like this terrifying illness that would rip your body apart. It would also affect like society for decades to come, which makes sense because, like, we see with COVID, we're still nowhere near back to where we were pre-COVID, and like. I wonder if like a chancellor of the Exchequer at the time recommended a stupid policy of eat out of the local tavern to help the local tavern.
I was just going to say, eat out to help out. There was, a young lord, Rishi
There's
Sunak
a viral
ancestor.
disease spread in close proximity. How can we help
but
this? Or
how
sit
can
together?
we stimulate the economy? Yeah.
So you know how bad we suffered in COVID and how financially it's this, I think we don't realise because we lived through one, we never considered one before, but how impactful these things are, not just for the...
Imagine when you didn't have the quality of life as you do now. You lived in fucking squalor and you were like, you didn't have 2 pennies to rub together type thing. Imagine you go, you're going to have to just get on with it. And, if you and your entire family
and
died,
COVID was
got to work.
awful. It choked you to death, but this was boils and blisters and burning. It's like really,
it's
really
more
hot.
graphic sounding, isn't it? Yeah.
And I think the fear of like COVID wasn't really scary for us because we were young, healthy, and it was just a chance to work at home and get pissed. But imagine you had to go outside in it every day and you might catch blisters and boils. Like the fear of going to work, and also I don't know, it feels visceral and terrifying.
Oh yeah, like it must have been scary for like frontline workers at the time, where
exactly they go into,
especially when like the NHS workers when they didn't have PPE and all that shit.
But imagine that would
be awful. But like imagine it was like something way more grotesque and like more visceral.
I always think if COVID was like a disease where you shit until you died, it would be taken a lot more seriously.
Or if it was like, COVID's bad, right? Your eyes blow
exactly.
Then there'd be no one going, I don't care. I'm not doing
because it was a flu. It makes it sound a bit more timid. But you might think that the landscape of Wales, like rich in mountains, valleys, and hills, would have slowed the march of the plague. But instead, it allowed the pestilence like creep silently. So it'd like move from parish to parish. But you wouldn't hear about anything, and then you'd visit, and it would be like nobody left in that parish.
Or you do when I can imagine you're in like one day, so-and-so died, he was awful ill the other day, and thinking, it's just a classic illness of the time type thing. And then all of a sudden the entire, like you said, the small community's just got it.
And they're gone. And I read that the ancient forests and like the crumbling like medieval fortresses that were saturated, they were like we used to have this great big ancient forest, didn't we, before Edward I kind of cut it down. But he said there was they quoted there being a stench of mortality across all of it. So like these ancient forests are now dead, these crumbling medieval fortresses, and now these parishes are just people dying in the street and not being buried properly and not knowing what to do with stuff. Just picture it being fucking so grim.
Oh god, can you imagine? It's like villages, towns, whatever. So many dead. Someone's got to fucking go and bury it. You got to get near the corpses to do that. Well, and you're like, well, I'm not going near it. And it's
the ones who did go near it, which were I always say this when I do these notes, but you've preempted a little bit. Like I think because you're like clever little brain of yours. The only people who would go near them were religious people, and that then causes an impact on itself, which I'll speak about in a minute. But economically, it was devastating to Wales. The lordship of Abergavenny recorded only a third of its usual rents collected, and Abergavenny was a rich town, and it had a lot of people from England living there, and it was quite a wealthy area. Over half its inhabitants were either dead or had fled in an attempt to save their lives.
Christ.
Ruthin, 77 inhabitants were dead by June. Most of the whole town were gone. Major towns like Llangollen, Llanerch, Dogfelin, all gone or deserted or dead. For those who did manage to evade the pestilence, they then had nothing. Their economic lives were in ruin. Land ownership, though, rents fell, tenants were left abandoned, lands remained uncultivated. So major market towns like Caerphilly, Cardiff and Tenby, all their markets closed down. 9 boroughs were recorded to have been completely deserted in the following decade. And what was weird in Wales, like very deeply religious, and lots of people felt this, but Wales, incredibly religious, thought this was a manifestation of pure evil, and they thought the plague was recompense for
the devil.
Yeah, for different things, for succumbing to the English, for resisting. Like there was a wealth of different reasons why people.
I would say that is such a Welsh response. It's because we fucking succumbed to the English, isn't it?
Yeah.
We should have fought harder.
It's because they felt they had pagan roots. They were embarrassed about. Other people felt their pagan roots were why they should have stuck to their pagan roots.
Christ, really?
So superstitions were like rife, and there was a huge air of paranoia, and like civic hospitality or civic duty to one another completely broke down. And just to go over the symptoms again, there was swelling in the armpits, violent headaches, sores that erupted into rashes, death. So people could easily see who was getting it. It wasn't like you had a cough. You could physically see who was dying. And what was sad is people would be left to die on their own because they don't want to be catching it. So
no one wants to go near you.
So to begin with, in the summer of 1349, Wales was ravaged by the bubonic plague from the fleas. And then as winter drove them out, the pneumonic version erupted. So it became airborne. You can't even escape the air. But by the time the disease died away, it's estimated that several commotes and villages had most of their population reduced to 80%. So across Wales, there was a huge amount of towns who had just been decimated. And like I said, it was...
Sorry, is that... So you mean reduced by 80%, so 20% left?
Yes, yeah. So it was estimated that several commotes and villages, it wasn't like a one-off that one had like 80%. Several places had 80% of their population decimated. This is mostly in marshland territory, which I'll talk about again in a second, but those territories that were run by the English or the Normans suffered the worst. This wasn't just a one-time thing. The Black Death came back to Britain on several occasions. In Wales, there was a severe outbreak in 1361, which is called the Second Pestilence, and then again in 1369. And both these later outbreaks specifically hit younger people. So that might have been because there wasn't many older people left, or because it was a disease that hit younger people worse and children worse. The result of the Black Death was both harsh and significant. To begin with, the number of people available to till the land was massively reduced. So then there was bigger economic hardships. There was nothing being made or produced. Fewer people meant greater degrees of taxation. So those who were left got taxed even harder to try and recoup for those.
I love that thing of going, it's been a rough couple of years, and then guys, a lot of people died. Right, I'm going to tax the shit out of you to make up for the losses.
So loads of farmers and peasants in Wales left to start new lives in England, which then compounded the issue. And taxation in Wales wasn't staying in Wales. So we were being taxed by the government in England, and then that it wasn't like he was being taxed by the Welsh to go back into Wales. He'd being taxed by the English, and the money goes back into England first. But weirdly, as time went on, there were instances where lords were actually paying higher wages to labourers because they had to try and keep people on their land so they could pay the tax. So there was instances where there were lords who were paying a better salary or better workers' rights, different concessions to make sure people stayed. So the average worker in Wales who stayed actually had a better life in some ways.
A net pay increase,
and also, other times, the lords had just died. So, like, they had new people took over the land and had either better morals or were better, had come from different areas. They weren't as kind of like hoi polloi. So they already were willing to give them better workers' rights or willing to pay better. So loads of people died from it. And those who did die left a vacuum, which turns out to be quite a little bit nicer people took over that vacuum. So as the plague passed, for those who chose to stay in Wales to like stick it out, and with so many lords dying, the land was now affordable to live on. So there's the Encyclopedia of Wales records that there was a subsequent rise in the standard of the living bondsman as a result for the demand of their services. And bondsmen were like working class people. So research found that the calorific intake of Welsh peasants was higher in 1430 than it was in working class people in 1914. They took more calories in the medieval time than people did in Wales in 1914. That's a symbol of how wealthy you are, of how much, that's why wealthier countries are fat. But yeah, the research found that calorific intake was higher in Welsh peasants than it was in working class people. And it's noted that some rare areas of Wales, Welsh tenants drastically improved their status in relation to lords. Also, it was areas where English-controlled Wales were hardest hit, so the marsher towns and English settlements suffered much worse than native areas. And this weakened the Anglo-Norman grip in parts of Wales over the next century and helped Glyndŵr when he started his rebellion in the 1400s.
To harken back to what you said about some people saying, the reason the Welsh suffered so is because we didn't fight the English off. That. Maybe the marshland suffered so because they were such bastards to the Welsh.
Well, think about that? The real reason is because they were market towns and they had more crossover.
Lots more population and ins and outs.
But no.
It's because you were nasty boys.
But it was most likely due to trade and therefore more exposure, or the fact the lords were going back and forth between England and Wales and risking spreading it across, like when Mark Dreyfus closed the border. I want to hear the
logic, mate. All right, I want to hear the hearsay. I want to hear the superstition.
Huge numbers. So then, in terms of the church, huge numbers of priests died because, like you mentioned, the only people who were willing to look after these poor people were members of the clergy, and they would often be with them to give them their last rites. And all these holy men would do that, and they were only the ones to offer like medical aid. So that meant nearly all of them died. I know it is incredible, but so many of them died. So not only did this mean a decline of the influence of the church and therefore like Welsh culture, it also meant there were fewer chroniclers of these dark, like dangerous times.
Or people who could write and whatever.
We lost them. Parishes went years without a resident church. Went years without a resident priest, which massively weakened the church's authority and discipline. Especially churches linked to England, because there was this kind of discontent with how the marshals had protected. They thought, right, at least if we're getting taken over by the English, we'll have stability and safety. But that wasn't the case, and they felt like, oh God, we shouldn't have turned us back on our Welsh roots. So for many people, the Black Death was a catastrophe. Obviously, everything I've just said is decimated people. By the end of the 14th century, historians said that an overall population of the country was reduced from 300,000 to 200,000. So 100,000 people had died because of the Black Death. It's hard to fact check all of these things because obviously not everything was written down, but this is kind of the agreed rough figure. So like I said, it's beyond devastating, and it's also something Wales couldn't afford economically or in terms of manpower, because we were just about to start a 15-year war with England and we'd lost 25% of the population or a third of the population according to different ones. And madly, right, the population didn't recover to the high medieval levels until they remained at this level until the 16th century. So it took 400 years for them to get back to what they were prior. So yeah, to sum up, the plague reshaped land ownership, population, and power dynamics, and also undermined martial authority and set the conditions for the last fight for Welsh independence by Glyndŵr. Wales after the plague was socially and economically different from the Wales before it, with places like Haverfordwest and market towns being absolutely thriving, now destroyed. The church suffered tremendously, and I'll finish with a guy called Ieuan Gethin, but he spelt it with a J, so like Ieuan, but like he's Spanish, like Jesus.
Like
Yeah,
Jegan.
yeah, jalapenos.
He's got a bit of zhuzh in his name.
Apparently, it's a French version of the name John, but also a historical Welsh variant. But he was a Welsh language poet from South Wales who helped historians see a lot about Wales in the 14th century because he was extensive, and also he wrote beautiful poems. They were noted for being like really, really well written. But he wrote about this poem. He wrote about the Black Death, saying, "We see death coming into our midst like black smoke. A plague which cuts off the young, a rootless phantom which is no mercy or fair consonance. Woe is me for the shilling in the armpit, it's seething terrible, wherever it may come, a head that gives pain and causes a loud cry, a burden carried under the arms, a painful angry knob, a white lump, it is of the form of an apple, like the head of an onion, a small boil that spares no one. Great is its seething, like a burning cinder, a grievous thing of ashy colour. It is an ugly eruption that comes with unseemly haste. It is a grievous ornament that breaks out in a rash, the early ornaments of Black Death. Ieuan Gethin." He died of the plague in April 1349.
Oh, bloody hell.
Yeah. And then I'll finish with a tiny bit of extra info. There was also, we have our pal who came on the pod, who runs the Welsh Histories, the social channels. I saw a post from him not long ago, which I wanted to mention. There was also a deadly plague in Wales called the Fadfelyn, which occurred in the early 6th century, so the 500s. So 700.
Yellow plague.
Yeah, you mentioned it before, I think, on other episodes.
I've done a whole episode about
yes.
it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so 700 years before the Black Death, and it's known in English as Yellow Plague, and it's remembered in history of bringing about the death of King
Or the
Gwynedd.
Plague of Justinian, as it's known as well, because it killed a Roman emperor.
And it killed King of Gwynedd, Malgwyn Gwynedd.
Yes, it did. And there's a whole myth about it. Him, I don't know if I'm spoiling your notes.
You are, but it's nice when you jump in with that because it feels like we know our stuff. So go on.
Malgwyn Gwynedd, there's a whole sort of folklore story about him confronting the Yellow Witch, or Gwrach Melyn, which was like the embodiment of the Yellow Plague. The reason it was a Yellow Plague is it made your eyes go yellow and horrible, and your skin as well. It was caused jaundice, basically.
It was prophesied in the Taliesin, by Taliesin, the legendary bard, that Malgwyn would be punished for his crimes by a strange creature with his hair, his teeth, and his eyes yellow, the personification of Fadfelyn.
Because he wasn't a very good
no, he's a bastard. Yeah. Well, that's the end of our Black Death episode, and if you haven't died, please do drop us a review. I mean, this would be such a help if everyone listening right now, if you got this far, if all of you dropped a 5-star review on Spotify. Oh, you wouldn't believe what that would do for us.
You wouldn't believe
what that would do for us, darling. I just want you to do it, darling.
Please,
yeah,
guys.
That's a plea. Sorry we're begging all the time. Fucking hell, with pigs.
Yeah, we're on our knees begging for it. But it would just make... It does the analytics does loads, fucking a world of good.
It really does. I mean, thanks to you all, you've pushed us up to if you ever to Google, what's the most popular Welsh history podcast? We are one or second normally, but still we've come out a long way from our early days.
There used to be a time if you put Tales for Wales in a search bar on Google, we wouldn't even be in the top 10. Now we're right at the top.
Just Google it, right? I don't like boasting, it's like pigs. Anyway, love you all, thanks so much, we adore you.
Diolch pawb, diolch